Welcome back to Deal Flow Live. I'm Brody Vincent, one of your hosts.
And I'm Ryan Santo, one of your other hosts.
And today we're doing something a little bit different. You might have caught an episode a few episodes ago where Ryan had interviewed me a little bit to get some of my backstory. Today I'm going to be talking to Ryan a little bit about his backstory and just having a conversation around it. What got us interested in that, in doing this and looking into companies to buy, and a little bit about what our future plans are. And we're just going to kind of keep it loose and get to know Ryan a little bit.
Excited. I mean, that was a great episode. Loved it. Go back and check it out if you wanted to hear about it. Brody's got some pretty incredible stories in a life that he's been very, such a short span of time, but you've done so much. So go back and check that one out if you haven't.
Man, I just enjoy this stuff a lot, and I've been having fun with it. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's definitely true. I've seen that firsthand.
But you're the same way, and I'm excited to talk a little bit about you and just what got you into this, what the steps that led into this. What I would love to start with is just how you got interested in entrepreneurship in the first place. What made you think about being an owner of businesses and getting into something like this? Where do you think that comes from?
I mean, it's really all I've ever known. I had two parents who had to run and operate their own business, and I say had to because my dad was brought into a family. My dad's a chiropractor, and my mom finished high school and just decided that for her whole life she wanted to train dogs. And she just kept doing that, kept showing up to places, training dogs, and just word of mouth, trying to build a business. And my dad and mom moved up to New Jersey after living in Florida, where I was born. And my dad and his brother, he went to join his brother in a family practice, and my mom had to basically start from scratch. And so she'd be driving me to school, and at all the parent-teacher stuff, all the stuff, people would ask, hey, what do you do, blah, blah, blah. And she'd be like, oh, I'm a dog trainer. And they'd be like, oh, I have a dog. And so she literally had to do the grind of, and in her head was just making up numbers of like, oh, yeah, I'll train your dog for an hour for $20 in my backyard. And people just started showing up, and eventually became like group classes. And then it got so big that there was no more space on the street for people to park, so she had to go get a building. And as this was happening, I was there on the backyard helping take checks and like writing down who attended and trying to track that stuff. And my dad was trying to build a practice of his own chiropractic stuff, so in many senses it was all I knew. And I talked to them later about it, and they said, we could have done things differently, but they were like, their purpose was to be as present for me and my sister during our childhood as possible. So like things you don't think of when you grow up are that my parents took me to school in the morning. I never had to take the bus at 7 a.m. My dad would drive me. They'd pick me up every day. Whenever there was a concert or a sporting event, they were always able to be there. They worked hard. Like my dad was at work at 8. He was up for an hour from 12 to 1. He was back down 1 to 8 because his primary patients were old people, families, and athletes. So he had to be there for post games and all this other stuff. And my mom was just like she would be like, say a random number, and then be like, they were like, hey, can I come by at like 6:45? She'd be like, yeah, of course, yeah. Anything to get people in the backyard. So from there, after kind of thinking about that, as I've grown in my own career, I've decided that's more of what I want to have. I want to have something that I can grow. And even though there were a lot of hardships for my parents growing up that they did their best to kind of keep from us, it's the sort of presentness that allows you to have, and the flexibility of being able to be there for your family and your kids is something where I think it's really important. That's what drives me to pursue the business ownership angle of business.
That's awesome. So you really got to be kind of born and shaped by it just from an early age. Tell me about what things you got out of that, because I heard a few things kind of laden in there that you got to see and experience that seemed like very positive things about having parents that were entrepreneurs. Tell me about the things that you learned and got out of that made you want that for yourself.
That there's a resiliency to it. And I think that everybody has to have resiliency to a degree every day. But I think in entrepreneurship, it's sometimes 10 times what you would face in a normal day-to-day, because there was no guarantee that people would show up. There's no guarantee people are going to keep paying you. There's no guarantee that somebody else is going to do the same thing down the street and everybody's going to go to them. And even, when you do have competition, you have to figure out how to be better, or if you're confident in your product, just keep staying the course. But there's a lot of unknown. And I think the unknown is, when you boil it down, what most people fear in entrepreneurship. But the unknown is where magic happens, is what my parents always said. If you knew how it was going to go, you'd already have it. So waking up every day and having that optimism and being able to say, today's going to be a good day, and pursuing that into that unknown is what I admire most. And that comes with the hard work, the dedication, the passion behind it. Those are all the things that we associate with it. But the courage and the resiliency to go into the unknown every single morning of your life, knowing that people may come or nothing may happen. It's very it's incredible to watch every day.
So it's something that you think that the pursuit of just makes you into a very resilient person, the type of person that you'd like to be, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, I was born into it. I consider myself a very resilient person. There's a lot of people who encompass all these things, but growing up in it, there was, and having to kind of work in it as a kid, you develop that kind of, you show up every day. I remember when I was little, my mom told me one time, she's like, Ryan, and I probably was like 5 or 6. She's like, Ryan, I'm going to tell you something that's very important. Because I think I was like, I don't want to go out and help. I just want to like sit on the couch and watch TV. And she's like, look, Ryan, I know you don't feel like it. She goes, and I say this with all love in my heart, nobody cares. She goes, nobody's going to care if you don't feel like it today. They're coming here for class, and they're coming here for an experience, and we have to deliver it. Even if you don't feel like it, even if you feel sad, mad, whatever, you have to show up for them. And I think that definitely shaped how I pursued everything as an adult, is that the harshness of the phrase, nobody cares, but when you have a job to do and people are expecting something that they're paying for especially, you need to perform.
I agree. So you've grown up in it, been shaped by it. It's something you want for yourself, and you want to build a life around entrepreneurship. Tell me a little bit about what you think that will look like for you going forward, and what you want that to look like.
I think from a micro level, it's waking up every day and having that thrill of not knowing what the day is going to hold, but knowing that I'm in control of my, of everything. And I think for some people, the thought of that can be incredibly terrifying. But for me, it's something I thrive in and I enjoy, and I want that feeling again. There's a sort of control in the lack of control, I'd say. But that's what I want, that freedom of being able to have flexibility, but also to shape the lives of people who are working with me in these endeavors, to give them that, I want to give people the flexibility of having almost that entrepreneurship without having it, so they can have that security. So if somebody says, hey, look, I need to go see my kid's recital, if I'm at the top of the food chain, I can make that happen. You don't have to worry about that stuff. So giving people the life that they want without the risk, but also me having the life that I want but enjoying the risk, I think is the type of stuff that I enjoy. So, I'm looking into a lot of different types of businesses. I'm networking and speaking to and having great conversation with people who work in these industries, and finding out there's a lot of people who want to maybe buy a business or get into a business that they know and are experienced in, but maybe just aren't sure how they want to go about it. And thankfully, I've had the chance to meet and, learn from a lot of people like you and the people that you've introduced me to that do this, where I can connect them safely to people who I know are going to take care of them and kind of facilitate those things that kind of help multiple people now.
So you talked in there about meeting people that are interested in this type of thing and networking. What have you found has been like the best thing for you to be able to network in this setting? Because I think this is where a lot of people get caught up. The term networking gets thrown around, and like everyone that wants to get into something like this knows that you have to network. What does that look like for you so far, and how have you made that into kind of a daily or weekly practice?
I agree with you. The word networking is thrown around a lot, and I almost cringe when I use it now, because I feel like it's the business card handout thing that people think about. But finding natural and very easy ways to do it is what I really strive to do. So weirdly enough, the best networking experience I ever had was joining the MBA program and ironically meeting everybody in that class, because there was so much diversity and just ideas in there that I mean, it's literally how I met you. So when people say, was your MBA worth it? It's like, well, it's a long-term play. Maybe it didn't, boost me up in my career like I thought it would. But if you told me it connected me to somebody like yourself, yeah, 100%. I'd shell that out all day if I knew that was going to be the return on it. But for me, it was connecting to spaces on, like, looking for networking spaces, literally just Googling networking spaces, events, entrepreneurship groups, anything that was online. I mean, Eventbrite, I live on there. I send you Eventbrite stuff all the time, and just going out and talking to people. And in the sense of the conversation's always like, hey, how are you? Good. What do you do? Oh, man, it's awesome. I like to learn about people, so I ask a lot of questions about people. And thankfully, people like to talk about what they do. And I'm legitimately interested in what people do because passion, I think, speaks to passion, and I'm passionate about people, so I'm always really interested. And eventually it comes back around to, well, what do you do? And I can say, oh, I work with people. I like to connect people who are looking to grow a business or purchase a business or get into their own business or do something in that space. And almost every single person's like, whoa, that's awesome. I didn't even think that was a thing. Tell me more about these people. And then I get to have more people talk, and I get to basically create friendships and relationships with people who are also superbly interested in business, and get to kind of have that experience with them of helping them get to that point. So for me, the networking was, I want to learn all about you, this new person I've never met, and you like to talk about, we all like to talk about ourselves. So it becomes a very easy interaction of genuine interest. And then eventually it comes to a point where it's like, oh, hey, I think we should talk more and do more stuff together. So that's how I've approached networking. Learn, love the people that you're talking to, and be really invested in them. And whether or not they can help you, they're going to be invested back in something you have to say.
For everyone tuning in, I could absolutely echo the fact that Ryan is all over Eventbrite, generating new opportunities all the time. In fact, this episode is being pre-recorded because Ryan found, of all things, an investor meetup for us to go to while this is airing. So as you're watching this, if you're watching it live, we're actually meeting investors right now, which is kind of cool. And that's because Ryan is in the trenches. He's the same way anyone getting into this has to be the same way I am right now. He's in the trenches looking for these opportunities, looking for investor meetups, business owner meetups, networking opportunities around the local community where you can actually shake hands with someone, look them in the eye, and tell them about what's going on in your life and hear about what's going on in their life.
Yeah, it's when you care about the person on the other side of the table and you have a genuine interest, they feel that, and they're very willing to talk to you and give you true advice. It's wild. I think a lot of business interactions can sometimes come off stale and very processed. So when you're off the script, essentially, it's very engaging, and I think it's. I think that I know that we use the term in the trenches, I think, a lot. I prefer to say I'm out in the field. I'm just kind of like scanning the horizon to see when like a flower pops up, and I run towards that flower and I get that flower because it's interesting, it's new, it's unique, and I want to learn all about it. So for me, it's like I get to have this opportunity to basically do what I do best, and that's talk to people, learn about them, and then we start yapping, and it always ends up really fun. So
the magic is in the yap.
Yeah, it always is. I think people crave. I'll have to share this with you. I'm reading a book about engaging with, talking to people in public, which is obviously not a big problem for me, but I wanted to learn some of the science behind it. And it's amazing how many people, when engaged in public, just as a random thing, later study shows that they were really happy with that interaction and that they felt it was one of the best parts of their day. So I think people should be less afraid to engage with people because 9 times out of 10, they're going to actually feel like that was the best part of their day.
I completely agree, and I think that if you become a person that creates those moments as a habit, one thing I've noticed is on days where I kind of go out of my way to create those moments and like try to engage with people, I feel better myself too. And the more I do it as the day progresses, the better I feel, and it's kind of this positive reinforcement cycle. And then I bring better and better energy into every interaction. So if you're watching, if you could, or listening, if you can start your day with some kind of positive interaction with someone and really talk to them, get to know them a little bit, and break the monotonous cycle of the workday a little bit, that does a lot for everyone involved.
Yeah, I think at your workplace, probably the best thing when you ask somebody how they're doing, really try to excuse me, really be like, no, how you really doing? Good. Like, ask about, maybe ask some questions about make a comment on a pin or something. Like, those little things where you start to learn somebody's personality, people appreciate, and be genuine about it. And you'll find that a lot of times your day goes a lot better because everybody feels better after that. But it's a lot of fun. I think working with you and on this journey to do this kind of, purchase a business, get involved with business buying and selling has definitely been something where that has really been a powerful trait for me to utilize, which is something I never really had the experience of doing. And sometimes I can be a bit of a gatekeeper. I can be a bit of a guard dog with some stuff. Like, I'm pretty careful with what I say to people, and in certain situations, and kind of who I let into the layers of the group, and kind of who I'll introduce them to. So I tend to be, as friendly as I am, we can have a really great conversation. But if it doesn't feel right, I'm gonna very politely not kind of continue that anymore, because I'm very, once you're in, I think it's important to protect the people around you, especially socially. I think far too often people just bring people into groups without really considering. And it's very important that those people who are close, understand that you're only bringing somebody in if they really fit, or if they're really going to bring some value in the sense of emotional whatever. So I think that's important too to remember. Not every conversation needs to be brought into the next level.
Agreed. Now, on a different subject slightly, we both went through the MBA program together here in town at UCF, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I would love to hear a little bit about, just from the perspective of someone who went through it with me, and for anyone that might be tuning in who's interested in how their education can elevate them into these pursuits that we're looking into. I would love to hear a little bit about the confidence that you gained from the education that we got together, that's helped you bridge the gap into this new world.
Okay. Yeah. So, I say this, and I'm just gonna say it. Confidence is not something that I lack normally, and in most situations. I think the MBA for me, it was a personal pride thing. It was a badge that I wanted to create, because obviously growing up with parents in business, as I grew up, I had ideas, I had thoughts, I was learning stuff on my own. I was trying to help, do that. And, my parents, if they didn't like it, they'd be like, well, why don't you just start your own business then? We started up, they're business owners, they're a little, headstrong, and I respect it, because, yeah, your business best for the most part. Not at everything, but for the most part, I can agree with that. So me getting an MBA was because, first of all, both of them said, you're not going to get into an MBA program, Ryan. You don't have any business, degrees. And it was more of a, yes, I do. I know business. I've lived in this my whole life. So it was more of a, not a middle fingers, but more of like a, I do know what I'm talking about. And as a result, now they're asking me business stuff. And now not that they didn't, but I think that the degree gave me the outside validation from people. It gave me a checkbox for people who don't know me that well to initially say, oh, he has an MBA. Okay, he's an educated individual. Nobody asks about the undergrad. They just care about the MBA, and that's been a tremendous part of connecting with people. They're like, oh, what'd you do? Oh, I have my MBA at UCF. And they're like, oh, okay. So immediately I've developed a rapport with them. This guy is a businessman. So I think that's the best part of the MBA, is that outside people, and you've had that experience too with people you've talked to, they're like, oh, you have an MBA. Oh my God, yeah, let's talk. Like, a lot of business owners respect it. So it's a great way to get into conversations and have I don't want to say status, but have a reasonable expertise from business owners to be like, okay, yeah, this guy, he knows business.
And I will say, a lot of people shy away from the talks about status stuff, but it's a very real thing in this world. There's a creator that's been doing that's building private equity funds again and again that I follow very closely. Bridger Pennington.
Shout out Bridger Pennington.
Got a lot of really cool stuff.
Please come on the pod.
Great content on there. And he talks about how it really is when you're getting in talks with potential investors for something like this, or even business owners that you are thinking about acquiring, it really is a status game. You have to do a thing called status matching. And if he uses the example all the time of if someone were to come and meet Justin Bieber, and they come in and they're like, oh my God, like I'm your biggest fan. I love all your stuff. In Justin Bieber's mind, he has to immediately he meets so many people. He has to immediately classify that person as a fan, and that's how he'll interact with them. But if they were to come in and be like, hey, I do some like record producing stuff for Kanye West or this person, whatever, then all of a sudden he's like, oh, interesting. Like this is someone in the industry with me. Like I'm going to have industry conversation with them. So it's a very real thing. It can feel like an icky thing to talk about sometimes, I think, for people. But in the world of business, it's a cold, cruel world. And the status matching thing is a very real thing that happens. And the more you can learn to recognize that and not be upset about it, but just play the game, so to speak, the more that I've realized you can just get further. If you come in and like you start talking to a business owner and you're like, you know a little bit about their industry, start throwing around some jargon the right way, not just uselessly, but you're throwing around some jargon. You know a little bit about what's going on in their industry. Maybe you ask them about whether labor has been a tough thing for them or something, and you know that it has. There's an immediate respect level and a level of conversation that happens versus someone who just comes in and doesn't really know how to play on that level. And I think that's a huge part of networking that's not talked about enough.
Yeah, you care. That's a genuine caring of the person, their business, which in most times, as we both know, the business is their life. That's their baby. And you cared enough about this to know, all right, we can have a conversation. And I think the whole conversation about how to approach that and how do we speak to people is probably another podcast episode in and of itself, because I think it's not about being because I think your status has such a terrible connotation, because people think like, oh, status, like you're showing up flashy and like expensive, but you're just trying to say, I know stuff, you know stuff, I've learned about your stuff. Let's be equal on the playing field here. Don't think just because I'm not in your industry doesn't mean I'm less than you, which can kind of be the inclination some way of like, oh, you're just an educated school person. You don't know nothing about what I do because I really do it. You come with that little bit to like, okay, you care. I'll talk with you. Let's play ball.
And at the core of people's desires, like people want to be around people that like friendship is built on like mutual exchange of value. Like people are typically friends because they bring value to each other. It's a mutual value exchange. And so when you meet someone, your number one goal, in my opinion, when you're networking and you're meeting someone should be how can I provide as much value to this person as possible for no reason except just to provide the value. And that's been, I think, from whenever I talk to you about networking, that seems like something that you do really well, whether that value is just good conversation or connecting on a personal level, or whether it's sharing something interesting or informative or educational for them, or helping them out with something. That seems like something you go out of your way to do as well.
I connected two people who are very, very on the high rise of film and TV podcasting and critiquing. Both in town, I've known them both, and I met him the other day at an event, and was literally like, hey, have you heard of these guys? Connected them, and this guy had gone and hung out with most of the cast of The Boys. He's interviewed tons of celebrities. He's been flown out to San Diego. My other friend, he gets premieres all the time, and he's like, I don't get to go to premieres. My other friend's like, man, I'd love to do more interviews. Connected them. They both had half their classes together at UCF and didn't even know they were like next to each other, and now they're going to do collabs. And I get, essentially I came out with, nothing, but that was the coolest thing I got to do. I got to connect to people who are probably going to become friends and help each other. That's awesome.
I think just doing that for the sake of doing it is always a positive thing. Like the way I think of it is like with networking, and just like being someone who does things like that, you're planting all these seeds all the time. And whether or not those seeds ever bring any return for you, it's not the point. You're just planting seeds and making the immediate world around you a better, more constructive place. And eventually you might find that a garden is growing around you and you're in it.
That's a great way to look at it.
Because you planted seeds that maybe you planted 10 years ago, and there's a little tree that grew, and you pick a fruit and other people are picking fruits from it. That's the way I think of it, at least.
Yeah, and you've got quite the garden that you've grown.
I've got a couple trees that I like.
And I think I'm gonna flip, do what I do best and yap. Flip the script here right at the end. Brody, you say, I think we both talk a lot about, right place, right time, preparation stuff. I think your view on luck is very, very good and very interesting. So I think, wouldn't mind, let's close it out with, Brody, how do you feel about luck and the concept of luck in business specifically?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's heard the term luck is when opportunity meets preparation, and I think that's 100% true. I don't believe that luck is this fleeting thing that you just happen to come across. Like, I don't think of luck in a winning the lottery type of sense, right? Even if you win the lottery, you were prepared by having bought a lottery ticket and you capitalized on the opportunity. And obviously there's a lot more luck involved in something like that than your everyday positive occurrence. But at the end of the day, I really believe that luck comes to those who just prepare themselves as much as possible, because opportunities are abundant. There's way more opportunity than the entire population of the world could possibly capitalize on. So you and I, everyone tuning in, we all come across opportunities every single day that we do not capitalize on and can't because we're not prepared. The more prepared you are, the more you can recognize and see those opportunities. And when they do come across, if you weren't prepared, you probably didn't even notice that something was an opportunity. Someone that you met might have said something that completely flew over your head, but if you had maybe prepared a little bit and been able to see that as an opportunity, then every conversation you have could bring you luck because it could be an opportunity. And so I think the way I think of it more and more is I just try to I handle the side of it that I can control, which is the preparation side. The opportunities are going to come again and again. And I know that because I'm prepared, I'm able to capitalize on those. Whereas someone who comes across the exact same opportunity might not even recognize it and might not be able to capitalize on it. I've been able to recognize and capitalize on them because I was prepared to do so. So I just try to continually prepare myself more and more and more, educate myself, meet people, put myself in rooms, and that preparation goes a long way.
Yep. From a kid, I was, kind of our mantra was, well, don't worry too much about how things are looking, how they're making, how they're going in life. That is a 3D, as they would say, perspective. You got to go out there, you got to make your own luck, which I think is exactly that preparation, understanding. It means get educated, get understanding, go fail a lot, and then you'll make your own luck through that education, understanding. So I think that's a very high level thought process that you run on with all of that, which is why all these networking events go so well, I think, for us, which we should probably do one at some point. We should probably host one here in Orlando.
I think that'll be coming very soon. We've been in the talks about it, and I think you can expect that from us very soon. If you're someone that's tuning in Florida, and especially in Central Florida, expect Ryan and I to be announcing some events of our own here pretty soon that you could come in and meet us, talk about what we're doing, bring opportunities to your desk that you might be able to capitalize on from the preparation of going out there and learning about things. And we're really excited about the future going forward.
Oh, yeah. And on this podcast, we're going to be having some crazy cool guests of people that are doing stuff that are just incredible in their own industries with businesses, investing. I mean, we're getting some crazy cool people coming on here soon, so make sure you stay tuned for those.
Yeah, stay tuned for people like investors, like, venture capitalist types, private equity investors, all the like, but also everyday business owners that are doing this, that are playing the field like Ryan was talking about, people that are bringing unique perspectives that can help you as a aspiring or current deal maker hone your craft a little bit, bring new strategies and that sort of thing.
Well, this has been a very productive episode. I feel like we've gotten a lot done, but I think we have some stuff to take care of today, so we should probably close it out.
Where can people find you, though?
They can find me at the moment on LinkedIn, Ryan Santo. Just shoot me a message saying you saw the episode, and I'll friend you right in. But I think Brody has said I should make an Instagram, so I am making an Instagram that you'll be able to follow very soon.
Nice.
And where can they find you, Brody?
You can find me just about anywhere. You might be watching this on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, or maybe even somewhere else. But you can find me on those three. You can find me on Instagram, on TikTok, just about any social media platform that you follow every day. But the best places to communicate with me are LinkedIn and Instagram. And again, this has been Deal Flow Live. We do this every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And typically what we're doing on this show is talking about businesses that are actively for sale that can be bought, whether they're listed on an online site or some kind of off-market deal or something. And tune in for the next one just to get an idea of what it looks like to be analyzing these businesses on a further level.
Yeah, this has been a great episode. Thank you, Brody, for interviewing me. I think we'll probably need to do some more of these, maybe more with each other, but also I think we should probably see if our guests want to do just some of these sit-down, how'd you get into this world?
Absolutely. And thank you all for